Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Browne and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
I've joked with my wife, and I've told you that 2023 has been the year that keeps on giving. We've all had our share of challenges during this year, but one of many bright spots, as much as we've had, all of us, but you and I have, had things pop up that were unexpected and didn't necessarily want to deal with. A bright spot for me has been the podcast. And I mentioned to you, was it like last week, that we have a really nice schedule right now where we have interviews every other week. It makes it easy for us to schedule.
Yep.
We don't have to rush or anything like that. But because of that, we have these longer stretches where we don't have to record.
And we miss recording.
Yeah. And so we talked about it and we thought, well, why not have every other week? 1 week we'll have the interviews. That's not going to change.
Nope.
We're so into that. We get such cool people. The snowball's rolling down the hill on that one. We're not going to stop.
That's right.
But why not use the other week if it's low production value or low production overhead for you? Just to have it open, I guess, open
topical
mic
conversations. Yeah. Kind of going back to our podcasting roots, if you will, of what inspired us to start this endeavor. There are always topics in and around RPGs that we want to talk about. And, our listeners know you and I are talking about this stuff all the time offline, but some of these we think continue to be worth, sharing. And we'd love to get feedback when they are. And even when they aren't. So we're going to mix it up. We're going to interleave. Like you said, we're going to do every other week. It's going to bounce back and forth between an interview episode and a topical episode. And we're going to bring more content to our audience and have more fun along the way.
Yeah, perfect. That's, and again, we don't expect these to run longer than our interview episodes.
These will be shorter.
We've seen the studies. We know that if we can keep these around the 30-minute mark or so, we know the chances are folks will, download them versus between 30 and 50 minutes. And then 50 minutes and after, other people will download it because they know it's a time investment. Here we're looking for, and we're asking just a little time investment from folks. So,
that's right. So speaking of that, we do have a topic for this episode.
And that would be, because I really don't know.
Yeah, please. We've talked about this, but so well prepared we are. So one of the things you and I have been chatting about intermittently for a couple months now is this really interesting crossover, for lack of a better term. We've noticed that there are a few, maybe not more than that, but there are a few very successful OnlyFans content providers who, right, and I say this with respect, right, they're OnlyFans content providers. They're very successful as far as we know, like the top whatever percent, who are, doing the whole nudes and lewds thing, but now are showing up on the RPG scene, specifically on some fairly high profile actual play, whether it's vodcasts or streams or whatever. And you and I made notice of that and started questioning, what's the business model? Why? I mean, this is such an interesting thing where, once again, RPGs and their adjacent stuff, they synergize with other elements of culture.
And I imagine you have situations, and again, this isn't, we're not talking about judgment here. This is a fascinating, in effect, like you just said, this is kind of a new business model that's been morphed and over time, and people who have private content sites are seeing the fiscal benefits of jumping over, and it seems that, and maybe a lot of it maybe potentially has to do with cosplay, like you
I
said,
think, yeah,
you
good
know.
catch, because that's sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. That
Yeah,
seems to be the intersection right there, right? The overlap that we're
yeah,
noticing, that you've got cosplay on the OnlyFans side, you've obviously got cosplay on the actual play streams, and we're seeing some crossover.
and I'll say, this is just a little bit on more of the ragged edge of the topic, but I noticed on TikTok, um, you'll see some folks that do that, but now are live streaming gameplay, video gameplay. And this is
Oh
kind of in
yeah,
that same vein where they are coming over and live streaming or recording, or like you said,
yeah, right.
um, analog play,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and grouping together analog play, um, you know, using virtual tabletops like you would normally see if you go on Twitch and find people. But
And you see this on Twitch and on YouTube and some of the other major platforms.
right, and again, I mean, we I'm surprised we've gone this long without making a comment against each other. But what brought this to, and because in all
Yeah.
honesty, we can make the jokes offline. I mean, we got so many that we can make fun of each other about that, just it would be a waste of energy.
Let me grab
Um,
my list. Oh,
yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah.
But there were a couple episodes of some shows
Yeah.
that caught our attention because they were for games that we were interested in.
Oh yeah, right. And high
And
profile, D&D, Pathfinder, those type of things.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and saw some people that I'm like, oh, I haven't seen this person before, and I did a search, and they were into cosplay, and
Yeah.
they had OnlyFans or other sites.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, not, I hate to say, OnlyFans in many cases is mainstream, but it's kind of on the edge of mainstream.
Yeah, exactly.
These are more center mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
because they hit a larger potential population of viewers or listeners. Whereas with OnlyFans and so on, you're in the 18 and plus category.
Yep.
And there's let's be honest, there's potentially a stigma that goes along with that site.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't necessarily know the particulars of how you do it, but I imagine a lot of people don't necessarily always feel comfortable going out to those places. But now these individuals are saying, hey, there's a benefit to running that and going center mainstream on
Now,
revenue model.
right, so to that point, now we are making an assumption, and
Yes.
and it's the assumption that is what intrigues us and is bringing this conversation to Dice in Mind. We're assuming there is a revenue model,
Yeah.
because we're seeing, this small number, as far as we can tell, this, at least for now, small number of very successful OnlyFans content providers,
Mm-hmm.
over 18 plus, who clearly must see a fiscal benefit and or a long-term professional benefit, right? Kind of, I think this is kind of where you were going earlier,
You
Brad,
can
of
drive,
opening the market, if you will.
yeah, you can drive people back to your original content. You could have two streams of, center mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
12 plus in terms of age content,
Right.
and then you have your more adult content, or like you said, using both to drive something else. I've seen certain cases where there are really outstanding artists painting, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be,
Yeah.
that use those platforms as a means to sell
Yep.
their particular products.
Right. But then flip that around, one of the things we've talked about on and offline for some time is how mainstream tabletop role-playing games have become.
That's the thing.
That's
Yes.
right, that's the thing. And so the actual plays have really become popular. I mean, to scroll through Twitter, look on Twitch, look on Discord. I mean, there's so much going on. It seems nowadays, even compared to like maybe 2 years ago, you can't throw a stone in the RPG arena and not hit either a new or an ongoing live. Sorry, I shouldn't say live. Actual play, right?
Yeah, and
They
footnote,
really have caught on.
that's why we don't do that, because there's so many good ones out there
Yeah,
We've
that's not why we don't do it. That's one of the reasons we don't do it.
we've dabbled in it here, and it crashed and burned
We
miserably.
we
So
did. Also, we're much happier on radio.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can do like old time radio with the dice sound and everything like that, I guess. But who in
Hmm.
tarnation's going to listen to that? Although you you're the one that introduced me to this idea. I mean, I guess it was out there. I just never investigated early on when we were toying with the idea of gaming. You um, were listening to a couple podcasts, audio
So
only
yeah,
podcasts.
yeah, I am an inveterate long-term listener of the Glass Canon podcast. That
Yep.
was when I so it and I I think of this we recently we because as we're publishing this episode, it's early December. We recently surpassed Thanksgiving, and that has this dorky added significance for me because in 2016, in the before times, I got back into role playing. We've talked about that a ton on and off the podcast, but because it happened to be over Thanksgiving that weekend when I was like, forget this, I'm getting back into it and I'm going to go get some books. Every Thanksgiving weekend for me is like this dorky anniversary. I kid you not, of I'm so happy I did this and got into it.
So
And
in other
so
words, what's this? What is Saturday called after Black Friday? Small Business Saturday.
Oh, well done. Yes. And so I might have to make pilgrimage back up to the source. Yeah.
That's why I brought
Yep.
it up,
Well
because I
done.
could see
Yep.
you doing that.
Roseville. In fact, I've done that a lot of Thanksgiving weekends. Okay. So that said, why I brought that up as I grasp this train of thought before it totally goes off the rails, I might be too late. Oh, so I had been convincing you and our friend Brian to, hey, let's role play. And the only way I could convince you, as our listeners, long-term listeners know, is we got into Pathfinder. And it's like, what is Pathfinder? I didn't realize that the world was getting into Pathfinder. So I started listening to GCP, Glass Cannon Podcast,
Yep.
because they're a Pathfinder podcast. And they were pretty transparent about the mechanics. And I got into it. And then now we're into the first dozen episodes of GCP 2.0,
Yeah.
and it's as good or better. But to that point, right, there's so much of that stuff going on, and we're seeing these hints of 18 plus creators, content creators, forging into that world, and it just we don't have any answers, we don't have any insight, but the business model, like w- how is it justified by the revenue? What's the market look like? What's the growth potential for this? This stuff is really intriguing to me.
And I think it's worthwhile that we have this discussion, because we've talked about this, and I know you reached out just a couple folks. I have to imagine um, folks would be weary to, I mean, if you're into that realm, weary to come on to a podcast with two middle-aged dudes, because you just don't know what the
Well,
conversation is
anyway,
going
we
to
were
be.
pretty much right. We were pretty much ghosted, but we also realized along the way that we also don't have a business model to promote, right? Like
Yeah,
like there's nothing in it for anyone other than,
no,
hey, we just like to talk to people and help them share their knowledge. And
but
maybe
this
eventually.
plays in again. Fringe model is this idea of social influencer as a career. And if you would have
Yes.
told me 5 years
Yeah.
ago, I would have been intrigued by it, but I just wouldn't have necessarily taken it all that seriously. Someone who follows business, I could see the business model. I just didn't think it
Didn't
had
have legs.
everything there for
Yeah.
traction, but it has. And so you
Yeah.
have this social influencer as a career,
Yeah.
um, you know, being generated by advertiser revenue, subscription revenue,
Mm-hmm.
product
Mm-hmm.
catalog,
Yep.
selling of wares and items revenue. All those can match up. I mean,
Yeah.
people. I mean, you go into TikTok, people will advertise. They get advertisement dollars from bigger products to advertise. I don't
Mm-hmm.
begrudge anyone doing that. I think
Oh.
it's fascinating that you and I are sitting here finishing up our 40s, watching this as a career popping up, and just the way social media is going, it's not going to go away. And this is just one more way for folks um, to who maybe started their career, because there obviously is a lot of revenue potential.
I mean, I subscribe monthly to the Glass Canon network to listen to the GCP, and it's a free stream.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean it, and you have Patreon out there
Yep.
where you can actually create paywalls if you want to, but you don't
hmm
have to.
hmm
You've got the what is the coffee one that you
Buy me a coffee. I mean,
yeah,
anyone who's ever listened to our show has seen our links down below, and
yeah.
not one person has ever done it. Although that's not why we got
And
into this to
please
monetize
don't
it.
go
Yeah.
doing it now, because that isn't an advertisement for
No,
it.
I mean, you
But
should totally go do it now, but it's not an
yeah,
ad. It's not an advertisement, right? We were curious about it, but there are all of these new
you got
avenues.
Venmo for instant transfer. You got,
Yes,
there's
totally different market.
yeah, and I know, like, my daughter buys, I mean, for people that do crafts and all, even folks that are, selling products from their streams, whether it's on OnlyFans or other,
Yeah, yeah.
um, Etsy as a
Oh
crafting content
man.
platform,
Well, and
you
eBay
know.
before that.
Yeah,
I
eBay
mean,
before that, but now I don't even know what eBay is. But
it must
you
still exist.
have
It does
you
still
have
exist, but
it still
Etsy,
exists, but I think
Etsy
it's
is
almost
huge.
Etsy's huge.
Um,
You've got you used to
yeah.
have Mercari and
I was
things
just
like
gonna
that
say,
have replaced eBay.
we've sold my daughters especially have sold a ton of stuff on Mercari.
Yeah. Yeah. It's become so easy to conduct commerce.
Yeah, which is just fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And so therefore, and how many times have we seen people that have been in, and again, no judgment, been in positions where they've been struggling to make ends meet,
Right.
and then they go and they start like an OnlyFans site, and it it may just be risque, it may just be minimal, and they're still generating lots of revenue compared to what their position was before.
hmm
And once you add in the ad revenue, and
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
moving over into some mainstream cosplay, um, costume creation, all
Which
this, it
which
blows
and
my
we
mind.
it does I agree, and we know it's huge because okay, let's step out of OnlyFans and 18 plus. My God, look at the explosion of cosplay.
Oh yeah.
In and around and beyond RPGs. I mean, look at the photos from, the major cons. Look at what like StarTrek.com and StarWars.com, for example, post from those things. It's all people in cosplay. So clearly there's an interest and a passion, and as you said, there's the potential, at least for some, to successfully monetize it and turn it into a business, if not an outright career.
Yeah, I mean, you have folks, and let's be honest, you have folks that start on OnlyFans and move over. You have folks that start out kind of center mainstream and move to that further mainstream
Mhm.
with OnlyFans because they felt like they can augment their income. You have folks that just, I mean, the amount of gaming streams out there that people will watch is insane. And I'll be
It
honest
is.
with you, when my son would watch these, I'd be like, I don't see the allure. But then I've mentioned this game before called Rust, which is
Oh yeah.
this survival game. There's a couple moderators, admins, that will record their interactions with people that are cheating or just acting
Oh,
foolish.
funny.
And they are sometimes hilarious to watch. And I got into this little phase during the summer where I was watching these streams and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've turned into my son. Now I get it. Um, People watch. I mean, there's just think about it. I mean, my son has a TV in his room and he's streaming series. Now he's going and it's random series. I've been trying to get him to watch Firefly forever.
Oh,
He's streaming Suits. Um,
interesting. What could you get him to watch Serenity, and then if he liked it, he'd go back and watch
well, he
Firefly?
went and watched The Rookie, which is where Nathan Fillion did that thing. It was as a rookie cop as a middle ager,
Oh
and
yeah.
so I have sent him clips of like I sent him the Sky Battle clip in Serenity. Um,
I
And
need to watch
literally,
that again.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally, I'll go up there, and if he's streaming something in my room or in his room, I'll be like, "Hey, Trent," and he goes, "Yeah, I know, Firefly." So I may have soured him on. My daughter will watch certain other shows, but they aren't television watchers like our generation was.
They don't have to be.
No, that's the thing is that entertainment. I remember us talking about this when we were in college. You know,
Yeah.
entertainment more powerful than our computers is in the palm of our hand with our iPhones or Android devices.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and you know, I remember people these kids will sit there and watch on these small screens. To me, I prefer a larger screen
Yeah.
mostly because my eyes are going.
Mm.
But just that whole revenue model of whether you're doing PG-13 PG or R content
Yeah.
versus G PG
Yeah.
PG-13 comment, and you're moving in one or you're moving in the other direction. um we've talked in humor about how to monetize this someday. um we still have plans in our notes and everything like that. It's just we're having fun right now, and we just obviously we're too small. We're small potatoes.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll tell you what. Okay, so I'm trying to. I'll share this with everybody because it's so improbable. But in the back of my mind, this dumb idea has been itching around for a while toward this point. It would not be a successful way to monetize. I guarantee we'd make no money off of this. But as
you
some
in
other,
cosplay costumes, I've told you we could make money off of that, but go ahead.
yeah, no. For so many painful reasons, no. Someday when we have even more interviews under our Dyson Mind belt. Maybe when we're in year 3, which isn't that far away, which is just surreal,
Yeah,
uh, we take all of our recordings, our interviews, have them transcribed, get
anthology.
permissions, and we have an anthology of interviews.
You know what? You may have mentioned that to me, in fact, in the past few weeks, in terms of another topic we've been talking about related to anthologies,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't think it clicked. Um,
Didn't click for me either, but now saying
but
it aloud and
now that
publicly,
we haven't talked about it in a couple of weeks, so this is the first I've heard of it as
it's me
well.
too.
And that is actually,
Wouldn't that be interesting? And we could get, find a publisher, find the right one, and obviously we'd need permissions, which would not be impossible by any means to get,
mm,
right? And you figure we've done how many interviews, and give it another year or two of
mm,
interviews, 20 some a year, and wouldn't that be just a ridiculous? You maybe curate them. Okay, we should probably stop because at this point we're so far off topic, but
yeah.
it
Well,
does bring us around.
I yeah, we got to be careful because we could go down the rabbit hole on this topic. Because now we're both like eyes wide talking about
Yeah.
this because this is
Yeah.
intriguing. You
So
heard it here
everybody
first.
ignore that. Just put your mind back to OnlyFans.
Yeah, you heard it
Um,
here first.
yeah, you heard. Well, yeah, because it would be ours. But seriously, I mean and this is I think what intrigues us about this OnlyFans presence around the edges of RPG land. That, as you said so well, Brad, we're seeing an increasing diversity of business models, right? Period. Like in the world that have not existed before. The platforms, the tech didn't exist. And we're seeing those intersect in a lot of really interesting ways with tabletop role playing and adjacent stuff. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, and you know, you are, yeah, your background of psychology, you're teaching leadership, which has a psychology component. You're kind of leading a charge in many ways in terms of mind body and things like that, and leadership, and using your psychology background and merging it. For me, I'm fascinated looking at the other side because I come from
Yeah,
business
that's
background
right.
and I'm a leader.
And
And so
IT.
like when you and Aaron published your book, um one, I wanted a signed copy, which I did get, and two, just any type of book on leadership, if it's quality, I'm interested.
Hmm.
This one was unique, one, because you wrote it, and two, because I thought it was relevant.
Yeah.
Same thing. Because of that, where the hell was I going with this? I can't remember anymore. Well, we're gonna leave that. We're gonna leave
stand
that.
by for a senior moment.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I mean, we
that's.
were talking about just all these
Oh,
different business models.
yeah. Um, that's point being is that I'm fascinated by um the changing face of business, and new positions like one of the big hot areas for study, which my daughter wants to do, is environmental science, which is kind of a
Nice.
merger
Yep.
of um, ecological preservation, biology, all
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a new one, thank
Yep.
goodness.
Yep.
Um, and now we're seeing these business models that are purely driven by the online, and it's not go to Wix or go to GoDaddy and get your business site
Right.
set up. You don't need
Right.
any of that anymore. You just need a
Yeah.
domain, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these sites that you host with will have pre-built and easily used subscription or product-based e-commerce solutions.
Right.
You
Right.
can be, in theory, anyone, um, except us, because no one wants to see us on camera. But
But your point is the
yeah,
tech is now there that essentially anyone with the tools they already have at hand can produce content that's interesting.
I think as we transition out, it reminds me in Back to the Future 3, at the relative beginning of the movie, Marty McFly is hiding out in his house like 15, 20, whatever, 30 years from the
Yeah.
original date.
Yeah.
And the son comes home and has this air quote television in front of him that's like
Right.
80 to 100 inches, and there's 65 different channels on it. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, wouldn't that be crazy? We're there.
That's how
We are.
you've been watching news for the past 2 months.
Yeah, well, I can only do, my streaming Fubo, my streaming service allows me to run up to 4 different channels
But
on one screen.
man,
And with everything going on, I had put that on for news. But now with Twitch and with these other
oh
things,
yeah.
4
Hmm.
channels is nothing, you
No,
know.
no, amazing stuff.
Yeah. So now let's head over, because we haven't recorded really in a while. Everything's been in the docket. So
Yeah.
GM corner, um, what's been on your desk or on your table?
Ironically enough, coincidentally enough, given the chat we just had around streams and screens and all that, it's not so much uh, what's going on Hooter is what's going in. No, that's an old Simpsons reference. Um, it's on the screen. I think I'm itching for a bit of a Star Wars marathon.
Movie wise, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't. Um, we've been so deeply immersed on and offline around Star Trek, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about Star Trek adventures. And, in my world right now, between avocation and vocation, there's so much Trek, and it's a wonderful thing. But for the past few weeks at least, I find my thoughts wandering back over to Star Wars. And I'm thinking, I don't know that I would marathon all of them, but I'm thinking December, I mean, just this time of the year, from like the approach of Thanksgiving through winter break, it's like, when are we gonna have a bit of a Star Wars stream, if you will? I don't know how much I'm gonna marathon, but I'm just in the mood to watch some.
You know, every holiday, I tend to, I should say not every holiday, but most holidays, I tend to Lord of the Rings binge. Um,
Oh,
and using the extended versions, just not the Hobbit. I might watch that afterwards. Not that there's anything wrong, but
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I can pass. Yeah.
but Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King. I'll watch those, not straight through, nonstop, but it may take me 2 days to get through one movie. It may take
Right,
me one
right.
for another, but I tend to watch them once a year at holiday
Man,
time,
man.
and I might this year do that, but have sorry, I have
Yeah, Brad's a little distracted
my
by
dog is
the
spazzing out up here, and I don't know what the
yeah.
deal is. Um,
waiting for his
I would. I
interview.
will probably bring the RPG from Free League and Free League up and page through it as the movies are on.
Okay, so this is problematic for me because I have been actively trying not to order that for the past month and a half.
Oh, really?
Really. We need, well, I am
Well, there's two.
increasingly
Remember,
intrigued.
there's two models. One,
So I'm thinking
Lord
of
of the Rings, which is the 5e one,
I'm talking
and
about the
then
One Ring.
the One Ring is the one that I
Yeah,
collect, and that
that's what
one
I would do.
runs the, you know, it isn't using the 5e engine. I wanted a
Right,
different engine. Plus,
right,
the One Ring is the one that predated
right,
Lord of the Rings.
right.
I I think it's really well done. There is a game out there, or there's a book out there. I've paused on my book purchases for now. Um, the Moria expansion, which I will get probably next year.
Was that recently announced?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought it's out, but maybe I'm wrong. Um, through the is it through the Moria through the doors of Durin? Oh, is it still
Hmm.
kickstarted? It may just
Oh,
be.
maybe I must have seen something else.
Yeah, it well, you know what? It's well, it's out there. I guess apparently it may not be um oh yeah, it's not expected
Okay.
until May.
Because I mean, if I
But
look over at the shelf, like
I
I'm
know
still
you've been
planning
kind of
moving a
organizing
couple
and
things, and
cleaning.
so I've got some space I can make available, but like only to read and or play.
I would say um that is a realm. We've played high fantasy,
Yep, of course.
but but obviously the Rings anthology
Yeah,
was kind of a driving force behind D&D.
without question.
And it would be fun to play in that realm where um, magic is there,
Hmm.
but doesn't exist as it would in D&D world or Pathfinder, or whatever the
Right,
case is.
exactly.
So it's a different type of play.
Where
Um,
magic is pervasive in the fabric of the world, but there are very few casters.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe
Mhm.
that's, I was actually the one that there was another uh, book you were looking at. We won't get into the details of it but you were looking at something that I think I actually talked you out of it.
Yeah, every once in a while, it just you look for new content, right? You look
Well,
for something
it
interesting
wasn't
to
like
read.
it wasn't like a splurge thing for you. You've been pondering between A and B, and
Yeah,
I'm like, well,
exactly.
hold off
Yep,
because
and I appreciate that because I opted for neither.
yeah, and now it
Yep,
might come into fruition as you research
exactly.
One Ring, because it would be a fun one to read and talk about, and
Hmm.
maybe at some point game, because there is the Strider expansion
Yeah.
that allows you to play solo.
Oh, right. All
So
right. With that, we just have to stop.
yeah, we'll stop. I guess for me, it's until we talk again, I may start my binge there. You're going to start your Star Wars binge,
I might have
um,
to. Yeah.
and binge by meaning every night we watch some versus something else,
Yeah.
And with everything going on, I'll let you do the sign off. I think it would be nice to watch something that gives us hope, and for those that are listening and those that aren't, um, we wish you safety
Yeah.
and peace at a time that it is hard to find.
Yeah, nicely said, my friend. And just a reminder to everybody as we continue toward the end of the year, we have a lot of stuff coming your way. There's going to be one more of these topical chats, but we are moving more and more toward our promise of mental health as we approach the end. So we've got a couple just really neat, really unique interviews coming up this month. And increasingly, you'll see as we approach the last of the year, greater and greater focus on mental health. That's our thing every time, every year, this time of the year. So, as always, be well, stay well. We will see you next week.